Steve. Steve, how are you?
I am doing wonderful.
Okay. You're fired up about all kinds of things. I don't know that we're going to see that fired up, Steve, but you're just energy is you've got a
It's
lot of
that
energy.
summertime energy. The rain has stopped.
That's true.
The sun is out. There you go.
You
A
were
ray of sunshine. That's what I am. Look
texting
at
me
this.
this weekend asking me what I was up to and then just well, you abandoned me, but it's fine. I abandoned
I know.
you.
It was bad.
No, you're fine.
It was a good intention, not poor execution.
And I appreciate it. You know what? I appreciate you just checking in on me. I appreciated that. That's what true friends do. Um, this is the Stuff Summer Says podcast
Steve,
Steve, where we will hopefully catch up and catch each other up on life because we took a week off. But more importantly, we also have a wonderfully great, awesome conversation with somebody we should have had on this podcast long ago, but also just a all around great human being, Mr. Mark Pavlik, head coach of Penn State men's volleyball. I think really great conversation because it's Pav and he will tell you exactly how it is. I think that's important. Men's volleyball is at an interesting time, particularly with some of the stuff that we talk about, and so that's important. We've also got some other stuff to talk about and look at. We got some football kick times to discuss. I want to do that. I want to also discuss maybe some wrestling stuff, maybe some salaries, maybe some attendance figures. Depends on how spicy Steve is feeling today. We'll see. And then an old guy, young guy. Brought to you by my weekend adventure, my new hobby.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. So listen to our interview with Pav, and we'll be back after this. Steve, I begin with an apology because I realized we should have had today's guest on long ago. We it's well overdue that we have head coach of Penn State men's volleyball, Mr. Mark Pavlik. Pav, how are you?
I am well. I was thinking that maybe in those early formative years of you being the collegiate beat reporter for us, I said or did something that, just you wanted to expunge all that memory of men's volleyball. now that I'm finally on, I've hit the big time.
There you go.
I'm very honored.
We were saving the heavy hitters.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, we were working our way up to this interview.
Yeah,
that's the best way to put it.
For the time of year where nobody listens or watches. Right?
I don't think that's true because we're pretty consistently there anyway.
All three people that listen, all three people that tune in. Pav, I don't even know where to begin. Let's begin on men's volleyball. I think we are on a more serious note at a serious crux for the sport. And I think you're a voice that I want to hear from as somebody that does still care about men's volleyball. Don't worry, I tune in, pay attention, still read off the block all the time. Shout out to Vinny. I guess I'm worried about men's volleyball, not necessarily Penn State men's volleyball, but men's volleyball at the collegiate level, the Division 1, 2 level. How worried should I be?
I think it's a fair question these days. Now, it's also been a question that has been asked throughout my entire coaching career. You go back 30 years where men's volleyball wasn't supposed to survive, and and you look at some things. We were poised after the Rio Olympics with what we did, bronze medal. We were poised to really make that go, and then COVID hit, and there were a couple of matches and areas that were going to host international matches that got wiped off the board because of COVID. And I think at that point, had we not had the pandemic hit, we would have seen an accelerated growth, I believe, through the early 20s, which I think we are seeing now in the mid 20s. But I think it was stunted. And then all of a sudden, we get our legs back. Another great showing by our national team at the Olympics, and certainly our Nittany Lions again. But then we hit the perfect storm of the NCAA versus House settlement, and now turning college athletics as we know it today into a more of a an industry where revenue is going to be a prime mover. I don't know if it's going to be the end all be all, but it's certainly going to take several steps up than probably at any other time, and certainly in my career. So I think that's going to cause some internal strife within the NCAA and certainly member institutions. I think men's volleyball will be, it will be interesting to see how the various athletic directors and presidents and chancellors look at this opportunity, and are they viewing it as, oh, finally it's a problem to give it that we have answers for, or is it an opportunity to see what we can do and grow into whatever the next iteration of college sports will be? And I use college sports because I guess I still firmly believe that anybody that is in college for an education. And how do we make these sports become co-curricular again, or how do we find the next level of relationship between athletics at this level and at this age, and how do we tie that into the missions and the educational opportunities that are offered? So I think to get back, the long circle back to your question, Darian, I think men's volleyball is at a point where opportunity will be knocking. Who takes advantage of that remains to be seen yet.
How do schools or teams or coaches or administrators take advantage of that? You've seen the sport change so much over your years. How do they take advantage of that? And how do, as somebody, as a fan of men's volleyball, how do we preserve that? And it's hard to sit here and say that when we see Grand Canyon, closing down their program. You've got Ohio State kind of going through some of the restrictions they're going through. How do you balance that? What is your pitch, I guess, to balance that?
Yeah, that people who are much smarter than I am are struggling with that to begin with, and not only just for men's volleyball, right? Pick your sport right now. I think, to me, if I were czar for a day, you sit there and institution, you say, all right, if I'm going to opt in and if I'm going to have to provide revenue, it's the revenue doesn't exist right now. You've got to create it, right? It's got to come in. And let me restate that. It exists, but it's already being used for other things. So, I think take a fine tooth comb, which I believe everybody in the country is doing at this point. But I also think you look at it and say, what is the goal for our athletic department? Is it to be the best in a sport? Pick one: football, basketball, women's volleyball, women's basketball. And then from there, I think you start to look at, all right, how can I work with our other sport offerings, and what kind of return on investment can I expect from what we have? And I think when you start looking at what you're getting from men's volleyball, especially in this day and age where you're looking at enrollment cliffs being hit, and just not the number of high school students out there that are applying to or filling the college ranks, I think you look at those sports that have a great or growing. There it is. That's our first caller. So what the heck are you doing with him on the line? I like that. Steve.
We'll have him on hold.
Steve, Darian, long time listener, first time caller here.
Yep. Ready to play the game? That's great.
This is exactly how we thought this interview would go. I think. Go ahead. I guess.
But I think you look at it and you say, what sports on the grassroots level, the high school level, are growing? What sports are expanding? What sports cost less of a investment than others? And you look and see, can we make that work for us? So I think that's probably a very simplistic answer to a very complex question that a lot of people are trying to get their arms around right now.
So where does men's volleyball fit by those metrics?
Well, I think we have over 30 to, I think the last I saw, I think we had over 33 states that now offer men's volleyball as a state sanctioned high school championship. Pennsylvania has led the way. In 1933, we were the first state of the union to offer a boys state championship in high school, which pretty interesting story on how that got brought in. Thankfully, the WPIAL and the PIAA went to them from. Now this is what my memory serves from Mike Shaw, former women's volleyball assistant, now head coach at UNC, and son of my high school coach. And I think Mike holds the record in the Pavlik household for drinking the most amount of iced tea by a non-Pavlik. That remains to be talked about. But Mike did a master's thesis on men's boys volleyball in Pennsylvania, and apparently back in the 20s, late 20s, they were trying to put together a state football championship. Of course, you had the powerhouse of the Philadelphia area and powerhouse of the Pittsburgh area, and they went to Pittsburgh and said, "Hey, here's what we want to do." Pittsburgh said, "Yeah, we'll do that if you offer a state championship, I believe, in baseball and men's volleyball." And PIAA said, "Done." So it was that late. But I digress from your question. So I think you look at that, you look at the number of boys that are playing club volleyball right now. Those numbers are an all-time high. In about a month, we'll be down in Orlando. And boys volleyball is nowhere close to where the girls club numbers are, but we're growing from, we'll go down there, and for boys volleyball, there'll be over 100 and I think over 110 courts playing various age groups, but they'll have like the 14, 16s and 18s for 3 days, and then the 12s, 15s and 17s for another 3 days. So you got that going. And I also think you look at it and say, what's going on the girls' side? All of a sudden you've got these huge club tournaments that are being run. Mom and dad, and Steve, in our generation, when we went to play someplace, did the family pack up and go with us, or they just said, "Here's your lunch. We'll see you when you get back"?
And if we even came back, right? They weren't even, they were like,
Agreed.
"Goodbye, see you."
Now families are turning those tournaments into family vacations, and the younger sons are being dragged to their sisters' volleyball tournament. And what do younger sons want? They want to do the same thing they see their older sisters doing. They're seeing, balls being peppered and hit, so they try to do that. 3 years ago on our team, we had Cal Fisher, we had Canyon Tuman, and we had Will Coons. Their mothers, Cal's mother still holds the all-time ace record at Eastern Kentucky University. Molly Tuman, Molly Driesbach, was on the USA Women's National Team when Selima Davidson, now Selima Rockwell, was on. They were teammates. And Will's mom was a All-American from Gannon, and she still holds Gannon's all-time kill record. Where does men's volleyball, the future of it? I think we're just going to see an explosion of young men playing the game because mom played it, because they were dragged along to their sisters. And you look at our roster now, and we have, I want to say we have at least 10 guys who are on our team who have sisters that play the game. Wow. And I think that's just going to exponentially increase. So I think there's going to be a big market of guys that want to play.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm curious, Pav, you are always so measured, not maybe measured, but just calm and reasonable and thoughtful. How do you champion your sport, and do people respond to, "Hey, here's the statistics, here's what's going to happen"? Or at some point when you have to talk with someone about the future of the sport, does your tone change at all in terms of, "Hey, this matters," and not there's pounding the table, but like, how do you deliver that message to people who need to hear it and will be making those decisions?
I I don't think my voice is strong enough, and I think that's one of the factors that we're missing in the men's game right now is advocacy. Uh, you know, I think USA Volleyball has done some great things for us over the years, but now that John Speraw is taken over as CEO of USA Volleyball, and he did that after the Olympics, so he's not even a year into his reign as CEO. But I know Johnny's trying to figure out ways to advocate for the men's game at the highest level. I think my discussions have got to start with Pat Kraft, and Pat and I have talked. Uh, any chance that we get, I try to bring him up to speed on what's going on in the men's game. The beautiful thing about Dr. Kraft is in his career, he was at Loyola in Chicago when Shane Davis won those back-to-back NCAA championships. So Pat gets men's volleyball. He understands the game and what it can do. But we need more voices at the table when decisions are being made at the NCAA level, because usually those decisions are being made from committees and not an individual person. And the makeup of those committees generally does not include anyone who has men's volleyball at their institution. So it's, what they don't know what they don't know. And I think the biggest thing we need is we need people at those tables being able to advocate for us and bring up men's volleyball than we have in the past. And that's where I think the American Volleyball Coaches Association, under the leadership of Jamie Gordon, is coming in, and Jamie wants to do some good things for the men's game. And Kathy DeBoer certainly, in the last couple of years before her run ended with AVCA, she was doing some good things. We got to keep that momentum going, but we need some heavy hitters who are able to talk to chancellors, presidents, the power ADs, the conferences out there, and really talk about, hey, this men's volleyball is certainly a great option for this new era of college athletics, whatever that might be.
Makes sense. That makes sense. I want to ask about Pat Kraft. You've certainly had a number of bosses over the years, but it does feel like Pat has re-energized campus. Maybe it would be the best way to say that. What is different about Pat Kraft? Why is everybody so fired up about Pat Kraft from the athletics perspective?
I think Pat just brings about an energy that I don't think there's a measuredness about him. I mean, he was a linebacker. He still has that mentality, in my opinion. Hit the guy that has the ball hard. And I think that's the way Pat approaches achieving success. Look, here's what we've got to overcome. Here's what we got to get better at. Let's get better at it right now. Let's get better at it as fast as we can. Does that mean we're going to have all the answers initially? No, but you got to trust the leadership that, hey, when you hit those unintended obstacles or consequences, it's okay. We can deal with this, and Pat's somebody I think that just keeps moving forward. I think it's been something that it's his strength. It's certainly his personality, and when you deal with leadership, that's you want personalities that are going to. You can't have great leadership unless you have great followership. And I think certainly at Penn State in my career, we've had great leaders who have been followed very well. I think this is no different. I think he's just a different personality that's fun to be around. And I have yet to see it, but I've got to go back because I haven't had time to do a deep dive. I want to see video when he played, because I am willing to bet he played just like he manages, where, hey, this is what I got to do. Let's get it done.
What's a you don't need to get like too particular, but what's an obstacle he's helped men's volleyball, the Penn State men's volleyball team with?
Well, I think number one of the biggest things we've had, and I think it goes for all the Olympic sports, is you talk to the guys about nutrition, you talk to the guys about sleep, you talk to the guys about recovery. I think one of the biggest things Pat's helped with is making sure that the nutritional part of what we can do for the guys has been significantly up. I think his understanding of, he was an athlete, he knows how much recovery is. The fact that we've been able to charter a flight once a year for our long trips. I mean, yeah, it's that's a great thing. The bad thing is, I don't think it's ever worked out yet. Where we've had 3 flights. One has worked out where we were, an hour in the air to Fort Wayne and Ball State. We played and we got back by 12:30 Saturday night instead of 4:30 like we normally would do. But the other 2 flights, we got fogged out of State College, so we had to land in Latrobe, and the trip saved us about 15 minutes. And then we went up to Boston this year, and we got caught in a snowstorm, so we couldn't fly back Saturday night. We had to fly back Sunday morning. So it's, but I think those are the things that you're looking at, not looking at it through the same prism of the way it's always been done. And, here I am being around 30 some years, or around the time when dirt was invented. And I can get caught into, well, this is what we've done and this is how we've always done it, and pigeonhole. But I think knowing that Pat's willing to look at a different way of doing things has certainly been able to take us and our staff and say, hey, let's play the what if game. And, I think that's the best thing for growth. What if we did this?
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't before. Well, no, maybe we can now. So I think that's one of the biggest things that Pat has done.
What's keeping you energized?
Man, that's a good question to ask 3 weeks after the end of the season.
I know, but you this is, for people listening, this is what every conversation was like back when I was covering Pav on the Collegian, and that was now unfortunately more than 10 years ago. But I want to know, like, I see you on the sidelines, I see you coaching, I see you leading, not just leading Penn State's volleyball team, but I see you leading men's volleyball in a lot of ways. What is keeping you energized?
Well, first of all, that's very kind, and maybe you should really take a look at what you're watching. It's been the guys. We've had, certainly the years I've been coaching, there's never been a team that I did not enjoy being around. There were some that were harder to get them to pinpoint their competitive personality. But lately, certainly in the last 10 years, we've had groups that have just been so much fun to be around. They've been in the gym. This year's team starts out 0-7, starts out 2-2 in the EIVA, and is saying, geez, I think at one point we might have been 3-11 or something like that, but they never let their record dictate to them how they should be every day in the gym. And that was the fun part. I said, Steve, you saw us play at Grand Canyon, and we were not good. And we come back from that trip along with Hawaii on the other weekend of that. And we were truly wondering, hey, where can we go with this group? And we just kept telling them, hey, believe in your strengths. Here's what we see in you. Then we go through the EIVAs and the beating Harvard and New Jersey Tech, not just beating, but sweeping Harvard, New Jersey Tech, and Princeton, where so 9-0 in games, where you looked at playing them in the regular season, our game record against those 3 were 10-10. So this group was everything that you want a team to believe and work toward. This team bought into and pushed each other to. But they were fun in the gym. It wasn't like every practice was, oh my God, we got to do this. They laughed at each other. They laughed at themselves. Mostly they were laughing at me, but I've gotten used to that. And it was such a great group, and I think that hasn't changed. And that's probably the one thing that just keeps me going is, what's next year's group going to be like, right? What's the personality how's that going to bubble to the surface? How do we weaponize it? How do we make it part of our success? And how do we get them to realize that 30 years down the road, when they're sitting in their corner office and there's a team picture behind them of this year's team, and your top client says, hey, tell me about that team. What do you want to tell them? You're writing that story right now, and it's fun to watch them go through a year where they realize that they've got control over how this thing turns out.
You,
That makes sense.
you mentioned it was 3 weeks after nationals, and you got Orlando coming up earlier. What does your calendar look like? I mean, you've got a trip to Orlando. Like, what does the off season look like, and then shaping the schedule next, or like how does, when you're not on matches and practicing, what's that look like for you?
Well, pretty much, if you take it as if our year starts after nationals and everything, we've got you start with the league meetings to try to get the EIVA position for the next year and what we're trying to do there, and then thankfully Colin and Ryan and Pat, they do all the heavy lifting with the recruiting. So Pat and Ryan are actually in Southern California as we speak, going through club practices to get eyes on guys. And there's a major tournament out in Southern California this coming weekend, and so they'll be out there. Colin will probably hit a tournament in his hometown of Chicago in mid-June. Heather and I, Steve, to your question, 52 weekends in a year, right? Yep. Heather and I have gone through our calendars, and on a good year, there are 7 weekends in that year that neither she nor I have volleyball responsibility. Wow. Most of the years, it's 6 weekends. So we're heading out on Friday and spending 2 weeks down at the Outer Banks. But you watch, I know what's going to happen. Friday morning or Friday afternoon, as we're driving down, we're going to get word that the House versus NCAA settlement was signed. So I'm going to be on the phone while I'm down there for the 2 weeks trying to figure things out. But we come back, go to Orlando for boys, JOs, come back from there. We have, in case you guys are interested, our alumni, we're having a golf outing July 19th. So, let us know. Darian, I think you covered Alan Mars, or were you just after Alan?
I think I was just after him.
Alan's putting it together.
So. It was Aaron Russell's team, was yep. Both Russell brothers.
Yes.
We're on there.
So that's, and then we go through August and we have our camps in late July, go through August and get ready for the guys to come back, train up through Thanksgiving, give them a break off for Christmas, get into the season. Next thing you know, it's the first week of May, and hopefully we're at the NCAA championships.
Okay.
Sure. Makes sense. All right, Pav. All things being equal, considered, the teams, the athletes on the court are the same. Who's the better volleyball coach, you or Heather, your wife?
It's not even close. I'm just thankful she lets me in the house.
How many national championships does the Pavlik household have total, and how many of them are Heather's?
She's been involved with 5. I've been involved with 2.
Okay, all right.
She's going back to back to back, reigning national champions. They're on a 97 match win streak. I lose in the quarterfinals, and I wonder if I'm going to get in my house. The bar's set pretty damn high here. So.
And you aren't the one setting the bar, it sounds like.
No. I mean, and you look at it, we've got strength and conditioning coach. We've got athletic trainer dedicated to the team. We've got sports nutrition. We've got mental health. We've got academic advisors. She's got to do all that herself. And what she does and how she recruits and the players she gets, they play an awfully good brand of volleyball. The difference between them and Katie's team is probably about 5-6 inches, but the way the ball comes off of their forearms to pass, or the way the setter releases it, they're comparable, and their kids compete really hard. It's fun to watch them play. I'm nowhere near the coach that she is.
I'm glad I wanted to know. I figured that was going to be the answer. I would be interested.
I'm not sure that's the right answer, but we don't have enough time for the self-deprecation to end.
Yeah, I'm interested to ask her, because I feel like, I don't know. I feel like she might say her as well. So okay, all right. Pav, we have a question that we always ask everybody. This is also a question I don't know that I know the answer to, but I'm now excited to learn.
You only
We always
asking him
end with
one? I
this.
thought people got three.
Do we want to ask him? We want to ask him three.
Well,
Do
he
you want
already
that?
answered the one without asking, right?
Yeah, he
He
already
made
answered
himself a
the
point of
czar
himself to
one.
czar. He's only got two left.
We'll give him. So we'll give him the final two. Um, what was let's start here. What was Pav's go-to hangout spot when he was playing volleyball at Penn State?
Well, for those 3 or 4 weeks that I actually was on the team as a player, my freshman year, I was just I was your freshman that didn't know what he didn't know. I think by the end of my college career, it was probably Highway Pizza.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Probably
Strong,
Highway
strong.
Pizza.
Yep.
Okay.
You know,
Right.
down on is it Pew? No, it's what's the one that runs up into campus?
Garner.
Been here for what 30+ years, and I still don't know the street names that bisect College and Beaver.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. What is Pav's go-to creamery ice cream flavor?
Oh, happy joy.
I think that's the first happy joy that we've had
Is
on
it?
this.
Finally,
I
I've raised the bar.
It was the
That's
first
it.
one that was that enthusiastic of any
Yes,
choice.
and
I
that
gotta
was
tell you,
that
there was no
there was
hesitation. It was
yeah.
that
No
choice. That's good.
hesitation.
So,
No hesitation whatsoever.
Yeah, we had Erica Dombach on. She kind of beat around the bush a little bit on the answer. I don't think Guy gave us like a direct answer when we had him on, but Pav, that's the Penn Stater in him, you know?
Yeah, happy joy. If you haven't had it, get it.
Okay. There it is.
and I don't know what you're recruiting, but like we're on a run of coaches who talk to us and then go to nationals. It might be a few months till yours plays out, but
Yeah, we'll hold you to that.
Okay.
We'll hold you to that.
The bump.
cool.
The bump. All right. Pav, thank you for joining us. This was awesome. Thank you for spending some time with us. It's always great to catch up. Yeah, appreciate it.
Oh, always great being with you guys. And Darian, next time you got to come into the office, sit in your seat where you always
Okay.
sat.
And ask you the tough questions. Okay.
Yeah, ask me the tough questions.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Right.
and usually the answer when you asked was just give the ball to Aaron Russell.
Yeah, it was. I mean, in retrospect, that was a pretty easy solve. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't make this coaching thing any harder than it has to be.
Exactly.
If you can find kids who have picked their parents pretty wisely, you're doing a good job.
There it is. Love you, Pav. Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
sir.
to see you guys. Thanks again.
Steve, I think first and foremost, what I appreciate about Pav is as I said there before the interview, tells it like it is, tells you what's going on, and isn't afraid to shy away from the tough conversations, but the tough conversations he's having with the sport right now, and really just tough conversations that he kind of has to have as a college coach. And I think, I think him saying that it needs a louder voice, I don't. I'm sure that he wants that, and he knows the sport pretty much better than very few people on this planet. But the smart voice or the best voice might be his, even if he is in landlocked Pennsylvania, he and away from California and away from the quote unquote hotspot of the sport. He's so in tune with men's volleyball. He's so passionate about men's volleyball, and he's also just so passionate about Penn State. And I appreciate all of those aspects about him. Yeah, I thought that was a really good conversation with him.
I was a little worried about the sport of men's volleyball when we started talking to him. I am less worried after having talked to him. Right?
Yes.
Pav is, first of all, too self-deprecating, right? Like we had teams this season from Penn State that at the halfway peak point turn their season around and make nationals and win a national championship and whatever else. His did the same thing. And on one hand, we're saying, oh, look at Katie, look at Guy, look at whatever. And Pav's like, well, the kids did a good job. Well, yeah. So did the guy who recruited them and put them in a position to succeed and stayed steady and stayed calm and didn't panic and allowed them to do that. And my favorite thing about Pav, which we didn't talk about with him, is the saying that I've stolen from him since the first Coach's Caravan when I was on the bus with him. And he talked about Penn Staters are ordinary people who do extraordinary things. And I just love that. I think his extraordinary thing will be being one of the voices that makes sure men's volleyball exists. And I hope people listen.
I think for me, as somebody that does care about men's volleyball, and partly because of that man right there that we just had a conversation with, I think for me, like, look, I get that men's volleyball is not the big glamour sport that football, basketball, and really plays. It's in the rare position that it plays second fiddle to the women's sport, as Pav even kind of alluded to there. It's the numbers are much stronger in the women's game. They are growing exponentially, as he said, in the men's game, but they are just raw, bigger in the women's game. But I think, for me, when you hear people talk about it and be passionate about it, like, yes, to your point, like I really do feel better about the state of men's volleyball kind of moving forward after having that conversation with him. And I know that that's niche, and I know that that's something that not every school in this country in the Big Ten cares about, let alone, in really in the country. But to me, it does have a place, and I think one of the things we kind of joked about a little bit there, but he's coached some very good volleyball players. He coached three of the basically the starters at the most recent Olympics between Aaron Russell, Matt Anderson, and Max Holt. Those guys are some of the best volleyball players this country has ever produced, and yes, Pav. While the athletes have to do things, and we'll take that path. Pav also deserves some of that credit, because I think Pav's other thing that I appreciated him hearing and reminding of us of is like the place of Penn State in the whole journey. It's a place where kids get an education first and foremost, and then also happen to play volleyball or football or basketball and if you're, for as much harping as people have done, while we're losing that plot, go talk to Pav. He'll make sure that you kind of remember that plot.
Yep, I agree.
I thought his conversation and I liked what he said about Pat Kraft. He made me feel a little more.
I was waiting. I didn't know. I was waiting. I thought I didn't want to bring it out when he was there, but I'm glad you feel a little better about it now.
Yeah, a little better. I think. Going back to the column or whatever, I think that's what also has come through, and I think it's come through with our conversation with Guy. It came through with Erica. Like, yes, because we've done something this way doesn't mean we have to do it that way. We might be able to push the boundaries. And that isn't to say, to what Pav kind of alluded to, is there's also been great leaders prior to Pat Kraft. And Penn State, it didn't just happen overnight when Pat Kraft arrived. So to people giving a little too much credit to Pat Kraft,
we started being nice. Then we still leaned into our little, okay, that's fine.
I'm sorry. So I think I have other thoughts, especially with those parking prices. Happy joy. I think that's the first happy joy we've got.
I'm solidly enthusiastic about it too. That's just great.
Yes, that was great. Where do you want to go next? Let's do some kick times.
Okay.
Anything else you want to add about Pav?
No, I didn't bring up the fact that I'm still on the Letterman's email list. I've told many people that I shouldn't be. But
that is amazing. I didn't know this.
So as a freshman, I signed up to be a public address announcer at men's volleyball. Something was going around somehow. I knew someone. I don't remember. I mean, it was years ago. I don't remember ever doing a game in Rec Hall. I remember going to an informational meeting about it. Maybe they didn't give me more information. Maybe I went to the Collegian because I started Collegian fall of freshman year, or spring of freshman year, I mean, and their season would have been gearing up then. Yeah. But I have been on the mailing list. I get emails. I get the Varsity S Club invitations. I have told people at least 3 times, hey, I'm probably shouldn't be on that men's volleyball list. And they haven't taken me off, so I'm done telling people. Although if somebody listens now, feel free. Although I'm happily supportive, so like
Pat will put you back on. That's the other problem. I do actually. Let's stay there for a hot second, because I do think you brought up Pav being, and to me he is one of the ultimate Penn Staters. But I also think Pav has done something very important, and I think we maybe should have asked Matt Fortuna about this. I think he was one of the guys that covered. I know Emily Kaplan is someone that covered Pav's teams. I covered Pav's teams. Pav so welcoming to Penn State's college student media groups, more so maybe than any other sport, and really cares and wants to foster that. And I think Pav role as an educator. He doesn't forget that, and I think that to me is what shines the most. So yeah, no, thanks for Pab for hanging out with us. I'm glad we did that interview. Okay, kick times. We got 4 of them. We thought we were gonna get 3 of them, but then it kind of makes sense that we got 4 because it seems like NBC had to sell something. Steve, I want to congratulate us for going 4 for 4 on the times, and I think we got 2 of the networks right. Very proud of us. I think that is first and foremost. I don't think we could have done that again. I don't know that we'll ever do that again, but I'm proud of us.
Yeah, because the rest of the season gets harder because you get. Well, no, we're certainly getting 1 more right the rest of the season.
Right.
So we're gonna have 5 out of 12, which still isn't super, but we'll get a couple more by sheer number. I hadn't been paying attention, and you texted me like we got them all right. I'm like we did. So, hey, we're not out in the middle of the wilderness, not knowing what we're talking about.
See,
certain
we're
things.
not the blind leading the blind.
Exactly.
I think that is the news, or the so 2 interesting things came from the kick times, and they actually all relate to the Penn State kick times. I think for the most part. The first most interesting thing is that I read an article on The Athletic that basically now CBS and NBC kind of seemingly rotate that spot, that 4th pick spot. To me, just based on the data and information that I have available in front of me, it certainly appears that NBC had the 4th pick this year as opposed to CBS having the 4th pick. I think that's pretty crystal clear. I think from that, we did not get any other big big noon kicks. And so I think that kind of leads to the obvious that the 3rd pick off the board is more than definitely the Ohio State game, Penn State Ohio State game to be more specific. I think there's been a lot of people being like, well, Fox didn't get the whiteout. And look, I know our collective airing of grievances against Fox knows no bounds, but I will say that if Fox wanted this Oregon game, they could have taken the Oregon game. And I think this opens up like an interesting conversation about the viewership of these games, right?
Right. I mean, because Oregon nobody's watching Oregon the way they watch Ohio State.
And I was thinking about this last night. Like, you and I pay attention to college football. I probably pay a little bit more attention to like college football writ large than you, but you're pretty well plugged into it too. I don't think the average college football fan could have named you more than 1. I don't know that they could have named you 1 Oregon football player. I think they could have named you several Ohio State players last season. And I think that just kind of is like, that's why this was the 4th weekend, because it's the 4th most attractive game. And 1, 2, and 3 are up here, and then 4 is down here.
Definitely. I mean,
it's a good game.
I think the other thing that came out of the schedule, the first 4 games, was for me, and not to be fired up about it, but now we don't have anybody bitching about the whiteout this year. Thank God. Like, we can go into a season and nobody's going to bitch about, oh, it's not going to be at night. Oh, when are they going to name it? You now have months to promote this thing. Not that it needs it. We know when it is. And there's really, at this point now, nothing to complain about in the Penn State football schedule. I don't care what happens the rest of the way. I don't care if Nebraska and Indiana are both at noon, which they won't be. Ohio State's going to be at noon. It's going to be on the road. This is a great schedule for Penn State fans, because those 2 of the 3 dog games that start the season are 3:30. You get the tailgate. You get to do the vibe before you go in and watch the slaughter happen, right? So you get to have your tailgate and do whatever else. This is a great schedule for Penn State fans. I mean, it just will be.
I was thinking about that in particular. Like, this is, you've got 4 home games, in a row to start the season. There is a bye week in between there, the weekend of the 20th in September. But, you look at that, 3:30, that's a good tailgate day. Like, everybody loves a 3:30 tailgate. That's, to me, I think is probably the optimal kick time. I know Mr. Samsel loves the noon kick time, so he gets one in there.
You get your big party in, you get your noon, the next one in, and people that's just workmanlike do it. Maybe people, they're not going to come up for 3 in a row. That's the one they sell, right? And then they come back for the other 3:30.
Villanova game, I had a Pope joke and I forgot what the Pope joke was going to be. Maybe I'll save that one closer. But then I think, knock on wood, September 27th is generally a good weather. It's not too hot, not too cold. Usually the rain of the year is over and subsided. That's usually a pretty good time to have a whiteout in terms of like you need everybody wearing white and you need, you want a good day of tailgating. So, yeah, I think there's nothing really too earth shattering really across the board. Like, I think what came evident as I looked at some of the other picks is just like kind of how boring the Big Ten slate is this year, and I do feel like Fox really got the best deal, or Fox maybe kind of screwed over NBC and CBS for the leftovers, and threw them a couple bones, but there's not really much out there in terms of like the way this contract is set up, and Fox is going to own it. Fox is going to celebrate it, and you might as well get used to it.
No, because they helped draw up the contract. I mean, that was they helped work the deal, so not a big surprise in their favor.
So nothing too earth shattering there. Like you said though, I think this is in a lot of ways the schedule you probably wanted. First game on FSN or FS1, FSN, RIP, FS1 since the 2023 season, and then the first 3:30 game to open the season since the infamous 2020 Indiana game.
Okay.
So, and all of that information, I want where you can find that information on Steve's handy dandy spreadsheet on the blog. That's a shameless plug, but I think you should check that out. Yeah, no, now we can kind of. What else are we going to talk about for the rest of the summer? I don't know.
Oh, there'll be stuff. Stuff will come up. We're going to have the house settlement. Pav's vacation is going to be ruined, and we can speculate about other sports and feel bad for him. Maybe it'll come 3 weeks from now. I'd feel better about that.
No. Hopefully it's at least not when he's sitting on the beach, Just let
Although it's fiscal year's July 1st, so they're going to have to squeeze it in by the end of June.
True. Okay. So there's that. You want to talk about wrestling? You're fired up about wrestling?
I'm not fired up. I guess I sent you a note because the National Wrestling Media Association this week on May 30th, 2025, released the Division I men's attendance leaders.
Yes.
And Penn State, your multi-time defending national champion, used to being first in everything, was second as they annually are to Iowa in attendance, total attendance, and even as a road draw. But I think that's because Iowa goes on the road to some bigger places, and Iowa comes here, which is a big place. So it was interesting in that, Penn State's not number one. But I think the more interesting thing to me was it's May 30th, and the attendance numbers for dual meets from the wrestling season are now being released as a news story. I don't know why. It seems like it took a while for that to happen, to be shared. That's all. If you were really following it.
If someone works at the Wrestling Association, the National Wrestling Media Association, can get back to Steve on why he's so fired up about this.
I am not fired up.
I know. I think
the last dual meet was when? February?
It's fair. I understand why you're fired up about it. I will say this. It did take a hot second for me to remember that Carver Hawkeye Arena is much bigger than Rec Hall. But Penn State's was at 9,000, which is still with 2 BJC duels. Let's see, that's still like 9,000, still like 2,000-ish over what Rec Hall can hold, so that's why it's above. I did have this thought question. Was wondering because we got the women's volleyball schedule pretty recently. Why has Penn State women's volleyball not played at the BJC? Like, it kind of feels like they would sell the place out.
I think it's just elbow room. I think yes, they would. I think it's where do you find them on the schedule? Although it starts late enough, you could do a match on a Friday night before a home game, football game, right, and get a crowd. I think, I don't know. I know the Saturday matches, they probably don't want to deal. They can't deal with the logistics of having it over there on a Saturday. Right. And maybe they can't deal with the logistics of having it on a Friday night beforehand, although they have concerts beforehand sometimes on a Friday night. So I don't know. Like, it would seem if they had the right opponent and the Big Ten is ripe and full of the correct opponents, that you could get a Friday before a home football game and maybe make that work.
and I don't know why that idea had never dawned on me before, but it's like, oh, we keep doing this wrestling thing. I think that's interesting and fun, but like it might be losing its novelty. I think you could celebrate women's volleyball. You can't have a game at Beaver Stadium because you don't have turf, unlike Nebraska. Like, try it at um,
And they are
the
playing in
BJC.
Pittsburgh. They're playing in Pittsburgh
Well,
to
and that
start the
was kind
season.
of yeah.
Might just
They're
in a
playing
big
at
arena, you know.
PPG Paints Arena, so yeah.
Maybe they'll
Um,
come.
I don't
I mean, the
know.
regular season, Nebraska's late on their regular season match, and that would be the one you would
Right,
do it with. And if they're late in the regular season, then you're getting into basketball, and maybe that
right.
gets you into a facility conflict. But yeah, I think that for as much as we've talked, it feels like it would be easier to do women's volleyball at the Jordan Center than wrestling at the stadium.
It's the only other logical sport that I think because you can't like nothing at Pagula. Pagula and Rec Hall are basically the same seating size arena. It doesn't really make sense to do it at Pagula. I think Rec Hall would be or the BJC would be fun just because it's a bigger venue, get a lot of people in there, shuttle up a lot of youth teams, like create a moment out of it. I think be a cool way to celebrate that team. So yeah. Okay. Other men sports news of the day. Um the nine the 990 form, which is the return of organization exempt from income tax form, uh, according to the IRS. That's out, and that's more specifically Penn State's. Let me get down to the official numbers because the numbers are a little adjusted here. But that includes several people's the highest paid Penn State employees' salaries, basically, for the most part, on here. And among those people, of course, are James Franklin, who made basically north of, let's call it like 8.5, 8.6 million last year. Mike Rhodes, we now know his salary coming in at about 4.2 ish million, all told. And then the most interesting one that has not showed up before and could be related to a contract extension that he signed in 2022, like under Sandy Barber. Kale Sanderson's salary is basically just over $1 million, like 1,017 is what it comes into, which probably definitely makes him the highest paid wrestling coach in the country. We don't know what David Taylor makes yet. We won't know that until probably next year. But the previous reports had the Tim Brant at Iowa 600K ish, 700K ish. I was definitely surprised as somebody that pays attention. I was surprised to see Kale Sanderson's name on here, but then also not that surprised because we kind of also knew how much he might be making, allegedly rumored.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess I always thought it was in that ballpark, right? Like how maybe not that when he first came, but that they opened the checkbook and he was making that money. Again, it's the bonuses, right? Like the base is what 3, and the bonuses are like 6 or something to get you there.
Yeah,
and other stuff. So, but no, I mean, all the national championships and whatever else seems to be doing it right. There you go. That's what it's worth.
Yeah. So we now know Kale Sanderson's. You can add him to the list. Before, because typically we only get football and men's basketball. We also know that Pat Kraft made 1.4 million. That is down from 4 million the previous year. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that could be for that. I don't know them. I've been trying to ask around on them. One could be just an upfront salary. He could be getting an upfront salary. Somebody else pointed out to me that could have been the compensation could have been included as part of his buyout from buying him out from the BC contract he was under. So that could have been another factor in it. So I don't think he's like getting paid less or anything like that. I think that's just how his contract worked out. The other one, and it will be interesting to see if this season or the next time it comes around, we see this season's results. Mike Yursich is on here at 1.2 million. Now we will see if Andy Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles, which we won't know Jim Knowles until 2 years from now, if they end up on this list as well. But just if you're paying attention to those things, an important kind of mile marker in the year for those who like to look at those numbers. Yeah, nothing too earth shattering there. I think the Rhodes number was up from Shrewsbury's. I think Shrewsbury was like 3 something. I could look it up in front of me, but I can't remember what it is exactly. Yeah, nothing too earth shattering there, but just wanted to highlight that. Okay, anything else?
No, I think that stuff's interesting for the level it's interesting, and
Yeah.
how far are we? How far away are we from seeing player salaries?
God, I knew as soon as he started talking, I knew he was going to ask me that. God, I hate when he
Well,
asks.
let me ask you this, because I know that's a totally different animal. When that time comes, do you want to know, or should they be put? Like if they're asking you for money to support the players, do you, and as part of that exchange, because you would be more willing to give money in part of that exchange than I am, do you need to know or have any interest in knowing how much the players would be compensated as a result of that?
I am. Well, the media, paying attention to numbers person is interested to me. I think as a fan, and we're seeing this with some of the men's hockey numbers that have been floated around. I use my words carefully here. Floated around. Um, I just think that a lot of these numbers just kind of feel whimsical and made up, and it would help me not sleep at night, but it would make me feel better as a Penn State sports fan, or just a college sports fan, to know actually what these numbers really look like. Because there's so much not even misinformation, but there's just so much information out there that we don't know and we can't determine, and there's no good way for me to sit here and give you a resource to say, hey, Drew Aller is making this much, or this hockey commit might be worth this much at this school versus that school. Like, to me, that's what's frustrating about it, because we have been so ingrained by the professional model. Like the NHL, we know every NHL's salary, we know how many years they're on. We pretty much know that for all of the other sports to some varying degree. Baseball is the one that kind of gets a little murky, but yeah, I think I would sleep better at night. And I would want to know that. And I think I don't know. I always kind of think it's interesting that people aren't releasing those numbers, because it's like I would use that as a marketing tool. Like, hey, we only made this much, and Ohio State raised that much. We need to up our game here. Like fans, we need you to up our game here. Or hey, we made this much more than Michigan. Like, haha, Michigan, you stink. Like nobody, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Well, in the
there's
nonprofit world, right? Like there's the trust scores, right? Like, well, we
Right.
97% of our money goes to the cause and whatever else. I think on the opposite, there's certainly a way to tell that story on the athletic side of it. Like that X amount of money goes towards those athletes, toward our success.
And I do think that is crucially missing right now. I think for me that is crucially missing, in the sense that like my little donation every month, I know it goes to the NIL collective, and I think I set it up so it goes to football, just football. But like, does it? How, like, no, I think I actually set up for all sports. And I think, like, what percentage of that? It's a very small donation, but what percentage of that is going to all of this sport and that sport? And then I think going back to our conversation with Pav, like that gives us ammo to support programs more. Say, hey, I'm passionate about this. I would like to make sure that they are getting well supported. Type thing.
That's fair. Cool. Thank you.
You're
playing along with my digression.
Yeah, I'm used to it by now.
Your weekend experience?
Yeah, my weekend experience. I've decided to. I don't take up, because I used to fish. I decided to reinvest in fishing.
Okay.
I just want to know, like, does Steve Samsel fish?
We fish at the Outer Banks each year. Like,
oh, do you?
We'll go out. I mean, not from the beach.
Oh,
like,
on the boat or on the?
We'll get a boat. Like we'll just
Okay.
we'll splurge. I will say that I have never seen anybody catch anything thrown off of the beach, but I've seen a few people. But like, I also believe totally different. Like, you need to be done by like 9:30 or 10. Like when the people show up at the beach, you need to get your buttocks out of the fishing area, just off the beach.
You're that guy.
Yes, I am. Especially with grandchildren running into the water coming up. Yeah, I mean, I grew up trout fishing with my dad, like Central Pennsylvania, go to a little stream, and that was fun. And some days I'm sure I was more patient than others, right? And it was a fine experience. And I got spoiled in early high school, 9th or 10th grade. We went to Cape May Wildwood went blues fishing like overnight, got there like at 10 and came back at like 6 in the morning. And you're catching these big fish, and I'm like, oh, trout fishing's kind of boring by comparison. And by that point, I was doing sports and college stuff, so I didn't fish as much. And the girls weren't wired to be patient enough to fishing, so we didn't do a lot. We fished with Russ once up in Tionesta, and he did a great job of like mentoring them to be patient. And they actually, I think, didn't fight for like half an hour, 45 minutes while they were together doing the fishing thing. So
big news for them.
Yeah, big news for them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so how about you? So what did you do to reinvigorate? What was the background and what reinvigorated it?
So Anna's been reading and she's been very locked into the reading hobby. But like, I don't know, like I, unfortunately, blog, not that I love the blog is in podcast, but you have to be inside, and it's like kind of really nice out recently, minus the rain that we've been having. It's like, I want to get back outside. So that's kind of how we're reinvigorating that. So Anna's been coming along with me and reading while I stand there and fish. We went to a park down towards Urbana, Clarksburg area, big little, like a state park type situation. It was fine. Didn't get a bite for 4 hours, but was outside for 4 hours and doing something outside. So, you know.
So what was your best fishing experience ever? Like, what was the grounding for like, okay, I'm going to try this again? Because the one time I got the hit of excitement, it felt so good.
I don't really remember catching this fish, but I do remember the day. I have a prize winning trout that I once caught. I think it was either either Frankstown Sportsman Club or the Bellwood one, the one kind of between down that way. I was like 8 and I won first place in my age division and like 3rd place overall for the trout that I caught. So we used to fish kind of like you, like kind of what you do in Central Pennsylvania in the summers, and so just decided to get back outside. So, anyways, all right, that's this week's We'll Go Young Guy. I have something coming on the blog. I'm not gonna say what it is, but I've been seeing a lot of stuff online by this one person talking about this one thing a lot, and I think that we should just all collectively ignore that person.
So you're gonna write about them?
Yeah, but it's a different person, and nobody at Penn State likes that person.
Okay.
So it's not a
wow. And you said I'm fired up. You're full on writing about something you're fired up about.
I know. So there's that. I'll do that this week. Let's see what else is on the blog. Updated roster is on the blog. That's there. Need to do some other just like behind the scenes stuff, but gonna try to make sure that we have a little bit more resources, finding new ways to pipe in new resources. Those will matriculate in over the summer. I guess would be a good way to say that. We've made it to June, so we've already kind of filled our only really 1 month to go until we can start talking about football again. 2 months and a half to go until we can start talking about football.
We'll be in good shape for that too, I think, to get to that period.
So yeah, excited about a potential interview we have next week coming. Very timely one there. So yeah. Anything else from you on the blog this week? I enjoyed your column. Was very good this week. It's kind of about the story management and the narrative management of 105.
Might be a little whiteout stuff. I don't know if I want to jump on, saying, hey, here it is, and shut up and enjoy it. Get ready to enjoy it before July. But it is kind of, because that was the story of the offseason last year, right? Like, oh, when are they going to name it? Oh, when are they going to do it? Oh, we're lobbying the TV networks. Oh, it needs to be a night game. Here it is.
And I think that's that's what we said last year, right? Like set the event, make the event yours, and you kind of got lucky into it. But I think next year, or this year, it worked out really well. And I think maybe even next year, looking at the schedule, it kind of could work out.
Is this as much, and this is live therapy for the story and that I wasn't really thinking about right until we started talking tonight. Is this the most notice we've ever had for a whiteout?
No, there's been some earlier ones. Like
Okay.
even over the course of this podcast, there's been some pretty, maybe not the absolute earliest, but or this isn't like the earliest, but this is up there as one of the earliest, but it's not like
the most notice I've ever had for one.
No, because I distinctly remember there was one we got a few seasons ago that was Ohio State, I think, or and we knew that well in advance. Yeah, we don't know the other game themes other than Northwestern being homecoming. I kind of hope that we give all of the telling us what to wear things a rest. I'm done with the stripe out. The helmet stripe thing, I understand why they were doing it, because they were doing it because they couldn't do 2 whiteouts in a year.
They'll do the stripe out. I mean, just because it's now they do have plausible not deniability this year and next to not do it because of the stadium, right? They could. The helmet stripe's probably the most easily executable one in some way. I mean, none of them are hard, right? You do the sections, but they're easy and they don't require people to do anything but look at their section. And Penn State people are rules followers, so I think those are going to be hard to get. I'd be surprised if they went away.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. That was the other thing we put on the blog, the new stadium chart, seating chart.
Yes, good by you.
That was just, I grabbed that from my ticket sales, so you could buy ticket sales or buy some early tickets. So I hadn't seen that anywhere, and I had reached out to some people on that, but they didn't get back to me. Interesting. I don't know why. So if you would like to
probably
reach out
because
to us,
they work for Pat Kraft.
I was trying to be nice, Steve. If you are trying to reach out to us, find us on the internet. You can do that. Our website's called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section called With
Steve.
We have emails, which you can email us things. Darian at stuffsummersays.com. Steve says.
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
5 stars, thumbs up. Appreciate all of that. Yeah. You can find me on the internet at Stuff Summer Says. You can find Steve
at Steve Samsel.
See ya. Bye.